Imagine waking up to sirens slicing through the quiet morning, a jarring wake-up call that yanked me from a dream of clucking chickens. I stumbled outside, rubbing sleep from my eyes, only to find two police officers standing by my barn, hands on their belts like they were ready to storm a crime scene. But the culprits, my chickens pecking lazily at the dirt, oblivious to the chaos. Apparently someone, my entitled neighbor Karen, had reported my farm animals as a public menace. What began as a laughable complaint spiraled into a wild chain of events that ended with Karen in handcuffs, her own arrogance her undoing. Let me rewind a bit. A few years back, I swapped the city's clamor for a quieter life, buying a few acres just outside a small town. I built a cozy farmhouse and set up a homestead, chickens, goats, and my favorite rescue, Carl the donkey. It was bliss. No honking traffic, just open land, fresh air, and the soothing cluck of my hens at dawn. Perfect until I realized trouble was brewing half a mile down the road. There sat a gated community ruled by a notoriously power-hungry HOA, the kind that fined you for a mailbox shade slightly off beige. And within that kingdom reigned Karen, the queen of entitlement, who believed her influence stretched far beyond her HOA's borders, right onto my land. Our first encounter was a disaster waiting to unfold. It was a sunny Sunday, and I was feeding my animals when I saw her marching across my property like a general on a mission. No knock, no hello, just a woman in a designer tracksuit stomping toward me, fury etched on her face. "You," she barked, halting near my goat pen. "These need to go," I blinked, baffled. "Excuse me," she jabbed a manicured finger at my livestock. "The chickens, the goats, that hideous donkey, they're an eyesore and they stink. Remove them immediately." I bit my cheek to stifle a laugh. "Ma'am, this is a farm, that's kind of the point," she scoffed, sizing me up like I was filth on her pristine sneakers. "This land's too close to our community. The HOA has strict guidelines about appearance, and this is unacceptable." I'd heard of overreaching HOAs, but this was absurd. "I don't live in your HOA," I pointed out, crossing my arms. "Your rules don't apply." Karen's smug smirk twisted her face. "Oh, they do. This area falls under our influence. We can't have livestock tanking property values." I raised an eyebrow. "So you move next to a farm and want to erase it?" she huffed. "That's beside the point. Comply or we'll take action." I laughed, thinking she was bluffing. "Yeah, good luck with that." Her face flushed tomato red. "You'll regret this," she hissed, spinning on her heel and storming off. I brushed it off as an empty threat, big mistake. Soon, letters started slipping into my mailbox, official-looking notices on HOA letterhead claiming I violated community guidelines. They listed fines, demanded I remove my animals, and threatened legal action. At first, I thought it was a mass mailing error, but they were addressed solely to me. Curious, I called the county office to check if my land somehow fell under HOA control. The answer? A firm no. My property was independent. So I took a letter to a lawyer friend who burst out laughing. "This isn't real," he said, pointing to the signature. "No seal, no legal backing, she's faking it." Karen had forged HOA violations. I could have ignored her then, but something told me she wouldn't quit. And I was right. The next week, a county inspector showed up at my gate, tipped off by multiple complaints about my animals being a health hazard. The county inspector, Ray, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard, stood at my gate, squinting at my farm like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Got multiple complaints," he said, scratching his head. "Claims your animals are a health hazard, illegal farm, endangering the community." I sighed, already knowing the source. "Let me guess, Karen?" Ray snorted. "She's been calling non-stop. We had to check, but this looks like a waste of time." He strolled around, eyeing my chickens scratching the dirt and Carl the donkey lazing in the sun. After 10 minutes, he whistled low. "One of the cleanest small farms I've seen." He gave me a thumbs up and left, saying, "Don't worry about it." But Karen wasn't done. I decided to install security cameras, motion-activated, covering my property's edges, just to see what was really happening. It didn't take long to catch her. Footage was gold. Karen sneaking onto my land at night, dumping trash near my fence, rotting food, wrappers, even glass. The next day, she'd snap photos of the mess for her complaints. I was furious. I printed stills and marched to the police station. The officer at the desk whistled when he saw them. "That's trespassing and illegal dumping," he said. "We'll talk to her." They did, but Karen got sneakier, her petty war escalating. One morning, as I fed Carl, 2 police cars rolled up my driveway. An officer approached, hand on his belt. "Sir, we got a report about aggressive animals." I pointed to my chickens pecking lazily, goats chewing grass, and Carl rolling in the dirt like a big puppy. Dangerous, huh? The officer glanced around, confused. A woman claimed they're a public menace. Karen, I said flatly. He nodded, exchanging a look with his partner. Check my cameras, she's been making false reports. They reviewed the footage, smirking as it showed my animals doing nothing remotely threatening. Filing a false report's illegal, the officer said, annoyed. But this was just the warm-up. Karen's obsession was about to hit felony territory. Those fake HOA letters she'd sent. They were comical at first, typed in a stiff, formal tone, demanding I remove my unregistered agricultural facility within 30 days or face $500 daily fines. The second accused me of an environmental hazard from animal waste, laughable since my farm was spotless, and my nearest neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, had a cow that stank up the county with no complaints. The third claimed I ran an unpermitted petting zoo, breaking zoning laws. It was so absurd I started a folder labeled Karen's Greatest Hits. Then the complaints ramped up. A zoning inspector showed up, saying, routine check unauthorized farm operation. Who complained? I asked. He smirked. Let's just say we've got a repeat caller from that HOA. Everything checked out fine, he even said. We deal with this nonsense all the time. I thought that'd end it, but Karen kept going. The health department came next, tipped off about an unlicensed animal shelter with sickly, mistreated animals. The inspector took one look at my well-fed crew and nearly rolled his eyes. Then a noise complaint about my rooster, Cluck Norris, loud, sure, but we're rural, crowing, normal. The sheriff's office brushed it off. Frustrated, Karen got creative. One morning, I found trash along my fence, rotting food, plastic, raw meat in my goat pen. It wasn't random, I knew it was her. The cameras confirmed it. 2 a.m., Karen hauling a garbage bag, dumping it, snapping pics, then scurrying off. I took the evidence to the police again. This is solid, the officer said, but without damage, it's just a warning, your word against hers. I nodded, patient. She'd slip up bigger. The next morning, 3 patrol cars parked by my barn. My heart sank. Had she hurt my animals? But no, the officers were facing Karen, smirking in my driveway, arms crossed like she'd won. 3 patrol cars sat in my driveway, red and blue lights cutting through the morning haze, and there was Karen, smirking like she just checkmated me. An officer turned as I approached. Sir, this woman says your animals are a public safety threat, claims you're running an illegal farm. I blinked. A threat? They're chickens. Karen scoffed, arms still crossed. Not just chickens, that donkey's aggressive, and your animals were on my property this morning. A flat-out lie, my fences were solid, and Carl hadn't wandered since I'd rescued him. Check my security footage, I said, leading the officers inside. On my laptop, the video showed every second of the morning, my animals safe behind the fence, not a feather out of place. Karen's smirk faded to panic as the officer turned to her. So you lied? I was mistaken, she sputtered. Maybe different animals. The cops weren't buying it. Filing a false report's a crime, one said, pulling her aside for questioning. I watched, arms crossed, as they issued a formal warning. Do it again and you're arrested. She stormed off, fuming, and I thought she might finally back off. Nope, Karen was vindictive, not deterred. The first time she called the police on my animals, I'd laughed it off. The second, I saw her unhinged side. The third, that's when it went sideways in ways she never expected. It started quietly just after sunrise. I was feeding my crew, enjoying the crisp air, when 2 police cruisers rolled up. My stomach dropped, not again. 2 officers stepped out, looking more irritated than alarmed. Morning, sir, the taller one said. Report of aggressive animals running loose. I gestured to my goats munching hay, chickens pecking dirt, and Carl sprawled out, soaking up the sun. Aggressive, loose. At that moment, Carl yawned pathetically and flopped over, kicking a lazy hoof. Does he look like he's chasing anyone? The officers exchanged glances. Not really, the second sighed, flipping his notepad. A woman, Karen from the HOA, says your donkey's attacking people and your chickens swarmed private property. I rubbed my temples. She's been at this for weeks, see the footage. Their eyes lit up. You've got cameras. Installed them after she started dumping trash, I said, pulling up the morning's feed. There was Karen standing at my fence, pointing her phone at my animals like a director staging a scene. Then the kicker, she tossed breadcrumbs, trying to lure my chickens closer. The officer groaned. You've got to be kidding. It gets better, I said, showing a clip from days earlier, Karen screaming at Carl to do something aggressive. Carl just stared, blinked, then turned and pooped right in front of her. The officers lost it, one doubled over, wheezing with laughter. When they recovered, the taller one shook his head. Textbook false reporting. The other nodded. We'll talk to her next time charges. I smirked, hopping that stick, but Karen's next move was dumber than I could have predicted. The following day, I was fixing a fence when lights flashed again. 3 police cruisers this time, plus animal control. I jogged over, heart racing. Okay, what now? The lead officer, visibly fed up, sighed. Another complaint. Karen says your animals are malnourished, neglected, a danger. Before I could reply, Carl trotted up, nudging the officer for scratches. This is Carl, I said. Real menace, huh? The animal control officer checked my livestock, returning in 10 minutes. Nothing wrong here, they're well-fed, healthy, happy. I turned to the cop. Another false report, he nodded. Yeah, and this time no warning. As they wrapped up, Karen herself stomped down the road, phone waving like a weapon. I knew it, she shrieked. You bribed them, take those animals away. The officer faced her, stone cold. Ma'am, you filed another false report. You're wasting resources. Her face turned betrayed. False. I've got video proof that monstrosity attacked people. We all glanced at Carl, now rolling on his back, legs flailing like a giddy pup. Karen's accusation hung in the air, absurd as Carl rolled on his back, kicking his legs like a carefree toddler while flies buzzed around us. The officer pinched the bridge of his nose, clearly done. Ma'am, turn around. Karen froze. What? You're under arrest for filing a false police report and harassment, he said, voice flat. Her jaw dropped. No, you can't. I'm the victim. I watched, delighted as they cuffed her right there in my driveway. She screeched as they led her to the squad car. I'll sue you. I'll get every animal off this land. This isn't over. The officer smirked at me. If she tries anything else, let us know. I grinned. Oh, my cameras are ready. As they drove off, Carl let out a triumphant bray, and I couldn't imagine a sweeter sound. I hoped that was the end. Karen arrested, humiliated, covered in her own mess from earlier antics. Surely she'd quit. But no, her entitlement wasn't just stubborn, it was vengeful. A quiet Sunday afternoon shattered that illusion. I was sipping coffee indoors when my phone rang. Hank, my neighbor up the road, his voice frantic. Get to your barn now. Some crazy woman's trying to load your donkey into an SUV. I nearly dropped the mug, bolting outside, jumping into my truck and tearing down the path. My heart hammered. What was I about to see? As I neared the barn, the scene was beyond ridiculous. Karen, in another overpriced tracksuit, flailed her arms, barking orders at a frazzled man, her husband, I assumed, struggling with Carl's lead rope. The SUV's back hatch gaped open against my fence, but Carl stood like a boulder, his expression pure donkey disdain. Are you serious? I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop and leapt out. What the hell are you doing? Karen whirled, eyes wild but not guilty, indignant. We're rescuing this neglected animal, she snapped. I stared, dumbfounded. Rescuing, this is my donkey, you're stealing him. Her husband, looking like he regretted every choice that led here, mumbled, Karen, maybe we should? No, she cut him off, jabbing a finger at me. I called animal control, the authorities, no one's coming. They're in your pocket, I had to act. I stepped closer. You got arrested for false reports, told to leave me alone, and your plan is to kidnap my donkey in broad daylight. Her eye twitched. It's not kidnapping if he wants to be saved. Right then, Carl yawned, flopped to the ground, and rolled over. Does he look like he needs saving? I asked. Karen's face twisted with rage. You're lying, this is cruelty, they shouldn't live outside. Karen, I said, incredulous, he's a donkey. Then, as if scripted, she lunged, grabbed Carl's rope, and yanked. Carl didn't budge until he did, jerking his head back with majestic force. The rope ripped from her hands, sending her stumbling into a fresh manure pile. Splat. Silence. Her husband went pale. Hank, watching from his truck, howled with laughter. I stood, arms crossed, torn between fury and letting nature run its course. Karen sat, stunned, filthy, shaking with anger. I'm suing you for endangering me, she screamed. I exhaled. You trespassed, tried to steal my donkey, and fell because you're an idiot. She opened her mouth to retort, but sirens cut her off. Officer Ramirez stepped out, hands on hips, muttering, what the hell now? Before I could speak, Karen slipped, trying to stand, face planting again. Even Ramirez laughed. She scrambled up, pointing at me. He attacked me, his animal attacked. Ramirez glanced at Carl, now licking a salt block unbothered. Ma'am, he said, I've had it with you. He turned to me. Charges for attempted theft and trespassing? Absolutely, I said. Karen went ghost white. You can't, I was helping. Ramirez sighed, waving her husband over. Sir, convince her to stop, or it's worse trouble. The man nodded, dragging her off as she shrieked. As Karen's husband dragged her manure-smeared self back to their SUV, her shrieks echoing down the road, Officer Ramirez shook his head at me. She's got issues, he muttered, still chuckling. File the report. If she shows up again, let us know. Next time, straight to jail. I nodded, the weight of months of harassment finally easing. Thanks, officer, Carl brayed as the police car peeled out and I patted his back. Good job, buddy, you dodged a bullet. I figured that was it. Corinne's donkey theft flop had to be her rock bottom. But no, she wasn't done, she was plotting. A week later, the quiet snapped. Stepping outside to feed my animals, I gagged at a stench so vile it could wake the dead. Dozens of garbage bags piled against my fence, leaking fluids, swarming with flies. My first thought was raccoons, but then I saw it. A handwritten sign in red marker stuck to a bag. HOA declares this farm a health hazard, shut it down. My blood boiled. I stormed inside, pulled up my security footage, and there she was, Corinne, caught in 4K, sneaking onto my land at night, hauling trash from her car, dumping it deliberately. Better yet, she wasn't alone. 2 HOA board members tagged along, one filming like it was a noble crusade. Unbelievable. I grabbed my keys and drove to the police station. Officer Ramirez nearly choked on his coffee when he saw the video. She's lost it, he said, shaking his head. I want all the charges, I said, arms folded. Good, he replied, because this is illegal dumping, harassment, trespassing, and conspiracy. He filed them on the spot, then dropped a bombshell. This isn't her first rodeo. She's got a history, HOA lawsuits, fake fines, threatening homeowners to sell for aesthetics. This time, she's gone too far. Illegal dumping to frame me was a serious crime, and I left knowing she was in deep. That afternoon, police rolled up to Corinne's house. A neighbor later told me she threw a tantrum on her lawn, screaming about corruption and conspiracies, even calling the HOA president for backup. It backfired. The HOA, smelling legal heat, cut her loose. Within hours, they issued a statement. Corinne acted alone. We never authorized this. Translation, we're not getting sued for her mess. Then came the payoff. Corinne arrested in her driveway, daylight blazing, half the neighborhood watching. Handcuffed, screaming, she reportedly tried to bite an officer, earning a felony assault charge. Her husband just stood there, a man broken by his wife's lunacy. The aftermath was glorious. Charged with trespassing, illegal dumping, false reports, harassment, attempted theft, Carl says hi, and assaulting an officer, Corinne faced jail time. The HOA banned her from the board, her worst nightmare, stripping her of power. Her husband filed for divorce, the donkey fiasco his breaking point. She was dethroned, ruined, and alone. For me, victory tasted sweet. I threw a farm appreciation day, inviting the town, petting zoo, food, music, and t-shirts reading Justice for Carl. The local news caught wind, dubbing it HOA tyrant caught red-handed. Corinne moved away in shame, and I finally had peace. No fake violations, no cops, no donkey heists. Just me, my animals, and a gloriously Corinne-free life. Or so I thought, until the internet took over. The story went viral, #Justice for Carl trending, memes popping up everywhere. A still of Corinne being dragged away captioned, "When you commit multiple crimes just to get rid of a donkey," became a hit. Carl became a legend, t-shirts, stickers, mugs with his face. A local company donated proceeds to animal rescue, and I gave my blessing. People stopped by for selfies with him. One drew him in sunglasses for a billboard. Carl, 1, Corinne, 0. The HOA got polite fast. No more power trips, just a sheepish offer for a community farm day to rebuild ties. I agreed with one rule: no HOA control over my land ever. The HOA's sudden politeness was almost comical. No more fake complaints, just a nervous new president knocking on my door, suggesting a community farm day to rebuild neighborly relationships. I laughed. They weren't after harmony. They wanted damage control after Corinne's implosion. Fine, I said, but no HOA rules touch my farm ever. He agreed instantly, palms sweaty. So I threw a bash, petting zoo, free food, live music, and hung a banner at the entrance. Welcome to the farm where even the donkeys are nicer than Corinne. The HOA pres saw it, sighed, fair enough, and the crowd loved it. Former HOA diehards admitted the farm was a blessing, not a blight. Corinne's exit left a void, and folks were ready to move on. But her downfall wasn't just local gossip, it exploded online. After the news ran, HOA tyrant caught red-handed. The internet turned Corinne into a punchline. Justice for Carl trended, memes flooding every platform. My favorite, a shot of her cuffed mid-scream captioned, "When you commit felonies over a donkey and still lose." Carl's face popped up on t-shirts, mugs, stickers. One genius sketched him in sunglasses, captioned, "You mess with the donkey, you get the cuffs." A local company sent me a cut of the proceeds for animal rescue, and I said, go for it. Carl became a folk hero. People drove miles for selfies. A billboard of his cool dude cartoon went up downtown. Carl 1, Karen 0, world enchanted. Karen's personal collapse was the cherry on top. Her arrest, trespassing, dumping, false reports, harassment, attempted theft, felony assault, crushed her. The HOA banishment stung worse than jail. Her power was her oxygen, and they'd cut it off. Her husband filing for divorce was brutal poetry. A neighbor said she came home from bail to papers on the counter. He kept the house, she got the boot. Divorced, homeless, and dethroned, she'd begged him to stay, but donkey theft was his limit. The day she left town was cinematic. Her luxury SUV sold, legal fees, probably. She packed a tiny rental car, neighbors gawking from porches as she stuffed suitcases in the trunk, red-faced, muttering. Driving past my farm, she glared, pure venom in her eyes. I waved cheerfully. She flipped me off and peeled out. Good riddance. The HOA's disavowal was swift and shameless. At their next meeting, they banned her from the board, claiming she'd acted solo, no authorization, classic dodge to avoid lawsuits. A few members even apologized to me, saying, she was extreme, we didn't know she'd go this far. I didn't need apologies, watching them squirm was enough. Karen's viral humiliation kept rolling. The news interview I gave, showing off Carl, explaining how patience and cameras outlasted her, aired with clips of her dumping trash, luring chickens, and getting hauled off. Karen versus the HOA, she gets thrown under the bus, became a local headline. Online it was a meme goldmine, and I leaned into it. Farm Appreciation Day doubled as a victory lap. Carl soaked up the love. Kids fed him carrots, and I sold justice for Carl, teas for charity. The piece that followed was everything I'd wanted when I ditched the city. No more fake violations, no cop visits, just me, my animals, and the sweet cluck of Cluck Norris at dawn. Karen was gone, moved away in disgrace, her reign ended. But I stayed vigilant, her kind didn't vanish forever. Reflecting on it, I'd learned plenty. Document everything, get cameras, stand firm. Karen thrived on control, and when it slipped, she self-destructed. Justice tasted best served with donkey memes and a viral hashtag. Still, I wondered, had she really quit? Rumors trickled in, her ranting in another town about a redneck donkey farmer. I smirked, let her spin her tailies. My farm was safe, Carl a legend, and karma had delivered. For now, I'd savor the quiet, unless she tried breaking out to steal my goats next. The quiet that settled over my farm after Karen's exit was almost surreal. No sirens, no fake HOA letters, just the gentle clucking of my chickens and Carl's occasional bray echoing across the fields. I'd finally reclaimed the peace I'd sought when I traded city chaos for this slice of rural heaven. But Karen's downfall wasn't just a personal win. It was a public spectacle that kept delivering. Her arrest for trespassing, illegal dumping, false reports, harassment, attempted theft, and felony assault hadn't just humbled her, it obliterated her world. The HOA's ban stripped her of her throne, and her husband's divorce filing left her with nothing but a rental car and a bruised ego. She moved away, shamed into silence, or so I thought. The internet, though, wouldn't let her fade. #Justice for Carl wasn't just a hashtag, it was a movement. Memes multiplied. My favorite showed Karen mid-tantrum, captioned, "When your HOA power trip ends in donkey poop and handcuffs." Carl's face graced t-shirts, mugs, even a billboard downtown, his cartoon self rocking sunglasses. People drove from neighboring towns for selfies with him, tossing him carrots like he was a rock star. A local company donated merch profits to animal rescue, and I approved. Carl deserved the hype. News segment, HOA tyrant caught red-handed. Went viral, clips of Karen dumping trash and screaming as cops hauled her off, looping endlessly online. I'd given a tour for the cameras, grinning as Carl hammed it up and explained how patience and evidence beat her madness. It was justice, farm style, and the world ate it up. The HOA scrambled to save face, their Karen acted alone statement a flimsy shield against lawsuits. At their next meeting, they banned her for life, her reign officially dead. A few members slunk over to apologize, muttering, "She was nuts, we didn't know." I waved it off, their backpedaling was entertainment enough. The community farm day I hosted sealed the shift. Hundreds showed, petting Carl, eating barbecue, dancing to a local band under my banner, where even the donkeys are nicer than Karen. Even HOA holdouts admitted the farm added charm, not chaos. Karen's personal implosion was the final act. Her husband kept the house, leaving her to pack up and flee. Neighbors watched her load that rental car, her glare as she passed my farm, the last I'd see of her. I waved. She flipped me off, a fitting goodbye. Rumors later surfaced, her ranting in another town about a redneck donkey farmer wronging her. I laughed, let her spin her victim tale. No one bought it here. Reflecting on the madness, I saw how it started. I'd wanted simplicity, land, animals, quiet mornings. Karen couldn't handle someone living free of her control. She tried fake letters, police calls, even donkey napping, escalating to that garbage-dumping frame job that got her arrested. Her entitlement fueled her ruin. She didn't quit when sane people would have. I'd learned key lessons. Document everything. Those letters in Karen's greatest hits were gold. Get cameras. Catching her in 4K was the clincher. And stand your ground. Caving early would have lost me the farm. Revenge wasn't mine to take. Karen handed it to herself, and karma wrapped it in viral donkey memes. The aftermath was pure satisfaction. No more cop visits, just neighbors dropping by to say hi or snap Carl pics. The farm was mine, peaceful, and now a local legend. I toyed with a sign, home of the redneck donkey farmer, beware of karma, but figured Carl's fame spoke for itself. Justice tasted sweetest when I didn't have to lift a finger beyond pressing record. Still, a flicker of caution lingered. Karen's silence felt too absolute. Had she really given up? For now, I savored the win, me, my animals, and a gloriously Karen-free life, unless she plotted a jailbreak goat heist next.